It begins beneath the surface, a world without light, without air, without mercy. Down here, the sea doesn't forgive. It waits. In 1945, as the war was burning its final embers, a single German submarine slipped quietly into the North Sea. No fanfare, no warning, just disappeared beneath the waves. Its name was whispered among the crews of other U-boats. U-400, they called it. But the sea had another name for it: the ghost ship. On board 46 men, young, proud, exhausted. Each one had already stared death in the face and somehow come back. Each one believed, maybe this time they wouldn't. For them, the ocean was both prison and home. Steel walls no thicker than your arm, separating breath from oblivion. They were told it was a simple patrol, a final mission before Germany's surrender. But nothing about this voyage felt simple. The captain, Oberleutnant Harold Weber, was a man haunted by silence. He'd seen too many men drown in black water, too many comrades swallowed whole by the Atlantic. Yet when the orders came, secret, sealed, unsigned, he obeyed. Because that's what soldiers do when the world stops making sense. They dove. 40 meters down, 50, 80. The light vanished. The air turned thick, and still, they descended. Somewhere in the dark, Weber stared at his compass. The needle quivered, spinning once, twice, then still. He didn't know it yet, but U-400 had just crossed a line from which no ship ever returned. In the crew quarters, whispers began. One sailor claimed he heard tapping, like knuckles on the hull. Another said he dreamed of waves turning red. The cook refused to sleep near the torpedo room. Superstition? Maybe. But on submarines, superstition is survival. They didn't talk about ghosts. They didn't mention the others, the U-boats that never came back. They simply prayed the ocean would forget their names. For hours they moved silently through the abyss. No light, no radio, only whispers. And above them, British destroyers hunted, listening, always listening. The U-boat was both predator and prey. A steel coffin, waiting for its final chapter. Then, something changed. A sound. A low, unnatural groan from beneath the stern, like the sea itself was calling their name. The engineer rushed to the controls. Pressure gauges trembled. A thin stream of water dripped from a valve, steady, rhythmic, like a ticking clock. Captain Weber leaned close to his crew. No words, just a look. And with that look, every man aboard U-400 knew. They had just entered the mouth of the unknown. The sea outside was colder now, quieter. Too quiet. No sonar, no signal, just endless silence. And yet, in that silence, something waited, something ancient, something watching. 48 hours had passed since U-400 vanished beneath the waves. The air inside was thick, hot, heavy with diesel and fear. Every man aboard could feel it, the weight of the sea pressing down, the silence stretching thin. The engines groaned, tired, wounded. They'd been pushing too deep, too long. Each dive a gamble, each moment a prayer. But the captain, Harold Weber, stayed silent, his eyes fixed on the compass, his hands trembling just slightly, as if he knew something the others didn't. Then came the order. Course northwest, deeper. No one spoke, no one questioned, they just obeyed. The first mate, Klaus Richter, turned the valve with shaking hands. The submarine tilted and began to sink, slowly, deliberately, deeper into the black. At 100 meters, the hull screamed. At 120, the lights flickered. At 140, someone whispered, "We shouldn't be this deep." But Captain Weber didn't flinch. He watched the depth gauge like a man hypnotized. The numbers kept climbing. 145, 150, 155. And then, silence. The engines cut. The world stopped. They were suspended between survival and the sea's slow hunger. Weber finally spoke, in a whisper that carried through the dark like a gunshot. "We wait." Wait for what? No one asked, because down here, questions were dangerous. Every word burned oxygen. Every doubt spread faster than smoke. So they waited. Minutes became hours. The air turned sour. The temperature dropped. Somewhere near the aft, a sailor started humming a lullaby, his voice shaking, breaking, then stopping altogether. Then it came. A sound, faint, distant, like a heartbeat in the water. Ping, ping, ping. British destroyers, hunting. The crew froze, every breath, every sound. In the stillness they could hear the sea's pulse, and their own. The depth gauge trembled again. A tiny crack appeared in the glass. A single drop of seawater ran down the side, slowly, deliberately, like the ocean tasting blood. Weber's voice cut through the dark. No noise, no movement, not a sound, and for a moment, even the sea seemed to listen. Boom! The submarine shuddered. Lights flickered, sparks flew. Men screamed, muffled by the roar of collapsing air. The second explosion came closer. Boom! The floor heaved. A pipe burst. Scalding steam filled the corridor. Weber didn't move. He just closed his eyes and whispered, "Hold your ground." And somehow, the destroyers moved on. The pings faded into nothing. The world fell silent again. But something had changed. A hairline fracture on the hull, a leak near the ballast tank, and a strange metallic knock from somewhere deep below the stern. At first they thought it was the sea, but then it came again, steady, slow, like someone knocking from the outside. 3 times. Then silence. The youngest sailor, barely 19, whispered, "Sir, what if it's another sub?" Weber turned, his face pale in the dim red light. His answer came out barely audible. "There is no other sub." Something was following them. Something the charts didn't name. Something the war never recorded. And as the captain reached for his map, the compass spun again. Slowly, then faster, faster, until it stopped, pointing not north but down, down where no man should go, down where light ends, down where the ocean keeps its secrets. U-400 was not just lost at sea, it was taken, and the mission had only just begun. The ocean is patient. It doesn't rush to kill. It waits, listens, tightens its grip, inch by inch, until there's nowhere left to go. For the men aboard U-400, that moment had come. They were trapped. 180 meters down, low oxygen, low morale, and a captain who refused to surface. The crew began to whisper. Maybe the captain wasn't taking them home at all. The radio officer, Schmidt, sat by his console, fingers trembling over dead wires. No contact, no signal, only static, and something else. A faint sound, low and distant, like a human voice, carried through the water. He leaned closer, pressed his ear to the receiver. and for a second he swore he heard it. A single word, barely audible. Down. Then, silence. The first mate burst in, pale and sweating. "Sir, the ballast tank's compromised. We have to surface." Weber turned, slow, deliberate. Eyes hollow, voice cold. "We go deeper." The crew stared. They thought they'd misheard. Deeper? At this depth, the hull could fold like paper. Every instinct screamed no. But orders were orders, so they obeyed. 190 meters. 200. The lights flickered, dimmed, then glowed red. The water seeped faster through a hairline crack near the aft bulkhead. Someone began to pray. Someone else laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from fear too big to name. Weber just stood there, one hand on the periscope, the other clutching his map, staring into nothing. Then, from above, ping, 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 another destroyer. But this time, the sound didn't move away. It grew closer, louder. Ping, ping, ping. Then, a flash of white light filled the command room. Every dial spun wildly. The compass froze. The depth gauge shattered. And then, everything stopped. No sound, no motion. Just weightlessness. The crew looked around. The engines weren't running. The lights, dead. But somehow, they weren't sinking. They weren't rising either. It was as if the ocean itself was holding them, suspended. And then came the knocking. Bang, 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 3 times, slow, measured, from outside the hull. The same pattern as before. The youngest sailor whispered, "Sir, it's answering us." Weber didn't respond. He stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on the black periscope lens, as if something was staring back. Suddenly the lights flickered, red, blue, then white, before dying completely. A low groan filled the submarine, metal twisting, bending. The temperature dropped instantly, their breath turning to frost. One by one, the men began to panic. Shouts, screams, footsteps slamming against steel. And through it all, Weber whispered, "You cannot fight what you cannot see." Then, a sound. A deep, thunderous crack. The hull split. Water erupted in, freezing, roaring, unstoppable. In seconds, chaos. Sailors clawed for air. Lights burst. Screams echoed. And then, silence. The sea closed in, and U-400 was gone. No distress call, no wreckage, no oil slick. Nothing. Just vanished. For years, no one knew what happened that night. Some said British depth charges sank her. Others swore she fled to Argentina. And a few whispered that she simply disappeared. But the truth wouldn't surface for nearly 80 years. Beneath the waves, the past never dies. It just waits to be found. After U-400 vanished, the ocean stayed silent. No distress call, no debris, no signal, nothing. It was as if the sea had swallowed it whole and erased every trace of the men inside. The Kriegsmarine listed it as lost at sea, one of dozens in the final chaotic months of the war. But something about U-400 didn't fit. The coordinates didn't match. No British destroyer ever claimed the kill. And strangest of all, weeks after the loss, encrypted radio signals began appearing from somewhere in the North Atlantic. They were faint, fragmented. No clear words, only fragments of old call signs. And every time investigators triangulated the signal, it seemed to come from underwater. After the war, rumors began to spread. rumors that refused to die. Some said U-400 escaped the war, that it carried high-ranking officers or stolen gold, that it fled to South America, vanishing under false flags and false names. Others swore fishermen off the Irish coast saw it, a shape rising from the fog, before disappearing again beneath the waves. And then there were the whispers of something far darker. Survivors from nearby U-boats told stories of hearing strange sounds through the water, not mechanical, not natural, but human. Tapping, whispers, voices calling from the deep. One commander, Captain Franz Mueller of U-1023, recorded in his log, "Heard knocking beneath our hull, too slow to be machinery, too deliberate to be waves." He ended the entry with a single line. It felt like something was trying to answer. Knocking, 3 times. The same pattern that haunted the crew of U-400 before they vanished. Decades passed. The war ended. The oceans became quieter, but not empty. In the 1960s, British Navy divers reported sonar anomalies, massive metallic shadows lying deep on the seabed, where no wrecks were ever recorded. Each time they tried to investigate, their sonar malfunctioned. Magnetometers went dead. Compass readings spun in circles, just like U-4O's had before she disappeared. It became legend, the ghost submarine of the North Sea, a story told in bars, in naval bases, in diver circles. Some said it was cursed. Others said it was still patrolling, forever locked in its final mission. And in a way, maybe it was. Because somewhere down there, beneath 200 meters of cold black water, something was moving. A flicker on sonar, a faint metallic echo. A shape, too smooth, too perfect to be rock. And then, it was gone. No one could explain it. Not the scientists, not the Navy, not even the oceanographers who swore that no wreck could survive that long without collapsing. But then again, the sea doesn't care about what should be possible. It keeps its secrets. It guards its dead. And sometimes, it reminds us they're still there. In 2018, more than 70 years after the war, a sonar team off the coast of Ireland picked up something. Something big. Something metal. Something alive with history. The coordinates matched no known wreck, no registered vessel. And as the sonar scanned deeper, the outline became clear. Long, cylindrical, the unmistakable shape of a submarine. After decades of silence, the ocean had finally whispered back. And what it revealed would change everything we thought we knew about what happened to U-400. Some stories refuse to stay buried, and some ghosts never stop calling. 73 years after the war ended, the sea still held her silence. But on a gray morning off the Irish coast, that silence broke. A research vessel, RV Vortex, was scanning the seabed for a new offshore pipeline. Routine work, nothing special, until a sonar technician named Elliot Ward saw it, a shape that didn't belong. At first he thought it was a rock formation, too deep for anything else. But as he enhanced the image, his hands froze. The screen showed perfect symmetry, a long, smooth hull, torpedo tubes, rusted but intact. He zoomed in. There, faint but visible, etched into the side, a number, U-400. The room went silent. Decades of rumor, of legend, suddenly had a shape and a shadow. They'd found it, the missing ghost of the North Sea, and it was sitting, perfectly preserved, at a depth of 230 meters. When the divers went down, they expected wreckage, chaos, destruction. But what they found was something else entirely. The submarine wasn't torn apart, it wasn't crushed, it was sealed, like something had gently set it down on the ocean floor and walked away. The cameras passed through the narrow corridors, still lined with pipes, controls, gauges frozen in time. In the captain's quarters, a cup still rested on the desk. A compass lay beside it, its needle pointing straight down. And there, on the wall, a single word scratched into the metal, barely legible through decades of rust. Ruhe, German for silence. Inside the control room, the divers found the captain's logbook, partially intact, sealed in oilcloth. When they opened it, most of the ink had washed away, but one page remained readable. It read, "Pressure increasing. Depth 210 meters. No contact. No surface. No surface. If anyone finds this, tell them." We heard the knocking again. 3 knocks, the same pattern, the same haunting rhythm. Even after 70 years, the sound seemed to live within the wreck itself. Some divers swore they heard it, faint, rhythmic, echoing from somewhere inside the hull. Others said it was just their mind, but every one of them came back changed. They found no human remains, no bodies, not even bones, just uniforms, equipment, and silence. It was as if the crew had vanished, not drowned, not trapped, but simply gone. When the wreck surfaced in the news, historians were stunned. There were no records of combat damage, no British reports of attack. It was as though the submarine had simply fallen asleep. And yet, scientists found something else. A strange magnetic field surrounded the wreck, strong enough to distort compass readings, just like it had the night U-400 vanished. Coincidence? Or something deeper, something the ocean still refused to reveal? In the following weeks, divers laid a plaque on the seafloor. It read, "Here lie the souls of U-400, lost, but not forgotten." And for the first time in 80 years, the knocking stopped. Maybe it was pressure, maybe it was science, or maybe the sea just wanted their story to be told. Either way, the ocean had given them back, not their bodies, but their truth. The sea has always been a keeper of secrets. It hides, it protects, it remembers. But sometimes, when the time is right, it lets one of those secrets rise again. The discovery of U-400 did more than solve a mystery. It gave names, faces, stories to men who had vanished from history's pages. 50 men, each with families who never got to say goodbye, each with dreams that sank long before their time. And now, finally, their resting place had been found. Historians pieced together their final journey. Letters from loved ones, photographs from home, fragments of a life, preserved in salt and memory. They learned that the captain, Horst Kremser, was only 29, that his radio operator, Franz Albrecht, had a newborn son he never met, that one sailor, Otto Weber, carried a harmonica with him everywhere. It was found, still clutched in a gloved hand. The keys frozen, but the music, still there if you listen closely enough. In 2019, a memorial was held on the Irish coast. Families of the lost, German, Irish, and British, stood together on the cliffs, watching the waves roll over the exact spot where U-400 had finally been found. No hatred, no division, just silence. The same kind that their loved ones had known below. A Navy officer read from the recovered logbook, and when he finished, the sea seemed to grow still. For one brief moment, no wind, no waves, no sound, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. Then, a single gull cried out, and the waves began to move again, because the story was finally told, and the dead were finally at peace. We spend our lives searching for meaning, for answers, for proof of what's real and what's myth. But maybe some stories aren't meant to be solved. Maybe they're meant to remind us that even in the coldest, darkest corners of history, there is still humanity, still memory, still truth. We spend our lives searching for meaning, for answers, for proof of what's real and what's myth. But maybe some stories aren't meant to be solved. Maybe they're meant to remind us that even in the coldest, darkest corners of history, there is still humanity, still memory, still truth. They say if you listen closely on calm nights, out there, where the sea is black and endless, you can still hear it. 3 knocks, soft, steady, fading into the depths. Not a warning, not a curse, but a memory, a heartbeat beneath the waves. The ocean took them, but it never forgot them. And now, neither will we.